Before this video starts, I just want to give a massive shout out to all my channel members. If you want to receive a shout out, then become a channel member today and you'll be shown on screen like all these other channel members here. Anyways, enjoy the video. I have made a few of these Battle Cats hot take videos in the past and I have enjoyed making them, although one issue on my end was that I always just ended up reading essays with maybe a couple of seconds of my own thoughts. Also, each of these essay-length comments take up time that could go into reading a higher variety of takes, so I decided to ask for your hot takes on my Twitter, which I recommend you also follow as I post stuff over there as well. Before we read some of these hot takes, all I ask is that if you enjoyed this episode, then be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and comment down below a hot take of your own that you would like to share. Anyways, let's get to reading some hot takes. Gigavolta is better than Bazibastra. They could freeze aliens for 3 seconds, so why would you need any high damage? And if he pairs out with Seafarer Cat, it's almost perma-freeze. I wonder why not a lot of people talk about him more. Gigavolta is definitely a strong unit with their great freeze time. However, I find that people tend to prefer Bazibastra due to their sheer damage stat, being able to nuke most aliens in a hit or two. Ural is the best legend unit. He has an incredible base stats with 9k DPS and 150,000 HP at level 50. He also has 405 range and 3 knockbacks, which allows him to safely outrange many opponents and tank those who outrange them if he needs to. I definitely say Ural is a top 5 legend unit, though would I say he's the best? I'd say Bahamut and Nala are still stronger generally, but for their niches, Ural is definitely the strongest of the bunch. As someone with controversial takes, I'll reiterate this. Armored Firefly isn't the worst egg. Is he bad? Yeah, for regular red and alien he's mediocre at best, but as a general behemoth meat shield, he actually works quite well. And against the crab, his weakness can help you rush them down. The main issue I find with Armored Firefly is that even against enemies like Scissorex, they tend to have a difficult time reaching said foe due to all of the support. Though I can agree that Armored Firefly isn't the worst egg unit out there. Poseidon is underrated by most people. Poseidon is the best ranged rusher for general use. He's incredible. Savage Blow being RNG does not make him bad, as the value you get from it is absurd. Good stats, irreplaceable at the moment. I can definitely agree that Poseidon is a really strong unit when you do get investment into Poseidon, with 267,000 damage with Savage Blow on a respectable 30% chance on a rebound unit makes it great. However, I think the main thing about Poseidon being a more unknown gem is that they lack any initial offensive power, and to get to this point, dumping a good amount of NP is needed, so that could put some people off. I'm not 100% sure how hot of a take this is, but zombie outbreaks are more fun than people give them credit for. While yes, some stages like in Cast of the Cosmos or Cast of the Cosmos 2 can be super mind-numbing, they're still fun. Only change they really need is when they appear, should be consistent. The zombie outbreaks can be fun, but the issue is that even outside their inconsistent appearance is that eventually facing just zombies can get boring fast. This isn't that much of an issue for the Into the Future outbreaks, but the Empire of Cats outbreaks can be an absolute slog to get through. Seed tracking is actually pretty fine. I would have quit or at least been extremely frustrated a long time ago without some of my most used Ubers. If you were to ask me about my opinions on seed tracking, I would personally avoid doing it at all unless you're in the end game, as I think rolling the gacha in the earlier parts of the game, not knowing what you'll get is very exciting. But it does get to a point where you just want to finish a collection, and there is when I think seed tracking can be pretty neat. Ganglion is extremely overrated, and I actually think it's not a great unit. Would much rather just use another sniper or just Castaway for alien and Housewife for zombies. I mean, personally, Ganglion can work well as an LD rebound generalist and does work well for his traits, but they can absolutely struggle against melee-based enemies, especially against burrowing zombies. I don't find the idea of Courier to actually be the worst thing ever. Of course he is overtuned to high hell, but I think the game was in need of something like him. Early game kinda sucks and he helps you super hard to catch up as a new player in the modern landscape. This I can agree with, since the game has gone on for so long that the meaning of endgame has stretched even past Nala, so a unit that can help early game players speed through the earlier sections is great. The main issue comes from specifically the behemoth sections being highly balanced around Courier, making it harder for units that could have been great to actually shine due to just dying from extremely high enemy stats. Space Cat is a great barrier breaker and people sleep on him a lot. Sure, a guaranteed barrier breaker in Fencer exists, but in stages like Unholy Tempest where you have to break about 10 barriers at once, having a spammable barrier breaker helps out a lot. No, Cyberpunk is not being counted. I see someone else is enlightened in the ways of Space Marine Barrier Breaker meta. I personally, whenever I do 4-star, Space Marine is my go-to barrier breaker since 50% is really great, and their high standing range means they can be safe from most barriered enemies. X's outclassed by Sanzo statement is getting on my nerves. Good unit, but not to the point that every other crowd control unit of practically targeting is totally useless. I do see this sentiment a lot, and I can agree to a degree. A recent example I can think of is a lot of people saying that Socrates is absolutely useless due to Sanzo existing. I mean, Socrates does have flaws, but he's still a very strong unit, and under the right circumstances, can absolutely allow you to steamroll any angel enemy. Speaking of that outclassed by Sanzo mentality, the most underrated unit is easily Kentaro. They have a really good range combined with good offense, not to mention their angel slow, which absolutely disables some angels. I know some are gonna say outclassed by Sanzo, but Ken Rangers has much better range and offense. The example with Kentaro is a great showcase that just because a more common unit can crowd control really well, doesn't mean another unit is terrible. In the case of Kentaro, they complement Sanzo extremely well due to Sanzo covering Kentaro's blind spot, and when Kentaro is evolved, they become a long-range sniper that can make some of the more frustrating angels easier to deal with. D'Artagnan fell off hard, and he is nowhere near as good people claim he is. Still an amazing Uber, but not nearly as good as people say he is. I mean, I can see that. I do remember back when D'Artagnan was first released, he was easily one of the best Ubers in the game due to his high damage and traitless targeting. However, as the game kept chugging along, stronger and stronger units came along, and we even have a unit that is quite literally just a fun-sized D'Artagnan, so having him isn't as big of a deal anymore. Like you said, still a strong unit, but nowhere near as powerful as he was back then relative to the new stuff that's been added. Sawcat is easily one of the best non-Uber anti-alien units in the game. Both massive damage and resistance to aliens is insane early game, and in the late game, the Barrier Breaker upgrade completely outclasses Kitty of Liberty in most circumstances. Extremely underrated unit. I can mostly agree. Having an absurd DPS value against aliens makes the alien heavy parts of the game so much easier, and having resist just makes them absurdly tanky. There are some places where they falter against aliens, but most of the time, they can easily shred and tank them for days. However, the guaranteed barrier breaker for Fencer removes any sort of RNG, and personally, I'm a fan of units that can consistently do what they're supposed to do. Cameraman is the most overrated cat in the entire game. After Stories of Legend, you don't have a reason to use her instead of super rares. Of course, it's amazing at her niche, but outside of floatings, you're better off with super rares in my opinion. Her main problem is her speed, way too slow for anything. It's true that Cameraman is very slow, but in my opinion, that's what I find makes her so good and why she's a top tier unit. Her slow speed allows a bunch of cameramen to coalesce together and deal so much more damage as a unit. Even when there's only a few stacked, they're all still dealing a good deal of damage together. Cat combos are the most unique and underappreciated mechanic in this game. I kinda wish they were talked about more. Cat combos are a neat concept, but the issue is that there isn't too many reliable cat combos that don't require an Uber that isn't research or the stat-based combos, since the buffs in most situations are too small to notice in a ton of situations. For the most part, you can only get up to a medium combo, which only extends the duration of a status effect by 20%. Great for some units, but the slots you need could go into other units that would have a larger impact on a level. CAT is better than Pizza Cat. I feel like that CAT would be better because compared to Pizza, he has more speed. Sure, CAT doesn't have a wave and slow, but weakening blacks are better because a majority of black enemies are very aggressive and would also work more on stages like Okame. For stages that demand rushers, sure, but the thing is that Pizza's raw damage against black enemies is twice that of CAT and has 71% more DPS and is over 60% tankier. This also doesn't factor that Pizza has almost 100 more range than CAT, and since most black enemies have melee range, Pizza can easily hit any enemy that CAT could with less risk. I've seen more recognition for Crystal Moo, but I still feel he is very underrated. A top tier anti-zombie that can 2 to 3 shot even Stardew El Cadaver Bear and 1-shots other peons. I'd say is very much comparable to Benkai in terms of how good they are at their niche. I think the main thing people tend to avoid using Moo for sometimes is their lack of speed, since they are quite literally the slowest thing in the game that can even move. Though yeah, when looking at the stats, I could definitely say that Mu is on a similar level to Benkai against Onish. While Mu only deals about 60% the damage, they share very similar DPS stats, and zombies aren't as tanky on average compared to angels. Catman is an underrated Uber. He is an anti-alien nuker who deals massive damage to them. He also gains an extra trait with each form floating from first, Angel the second, and Relic for true form. He gets you through all the stages of the game like Cyclones, Into the Future, Cats of the Cosmos, Stories of Legends, and Uncanny Legends. If you were to look at the Battle Cats meta back then, Catman was actually considered one of the best units in the game due to being able to target 3 different traits and had respectable generalist stats. His true form was one of the first Ubers dedicated to fighting relics, lifting his utility a lot. However, as the game has gone on, stronger and stronger units release, and units like Catman were kinda left behind in the field of the meta. Catman is still a great Uber, but compared to the stuff we have now, he isn't the strongest thing in the world. Balrog talents doesn't actually improve him as much as people think. He has always been that good untalented if you pump his levels up. Balrog pre-talents does have pretty good stats by level 50, having over 100,000 health and attack with over 44k DPS just means he can still get work done, but the strength and boost he gains legit shoots Balrog up from what would be a respectable S tier to the modern big 3 of today. Also, the cost down talents make him way more expendable. And for our last hot take of the video, 60 level Barons were way better than what we currently have. The rewards were infinitely better, and the fact that you could cycle between the 3 stages while they were on cooldown made it easier to deal with. So I never really touched the gauntlets until after the gauntlet rework, so I looked at the rewards of each of them, and to be honest, being able to get a wider range of rewards for people at various stages of the game is a great move. To be honest, I think they could add back the decondensified stages for the gauntlets, but also make it so that we have the new 3 place till cooldown system back, since before the rework, you could only play 1 stage at a time before going on cooldown. They would need to adjust some of the rewards, but it could very much work. So there were some Battle Cats hot takes that my Twitter followers provided, and I gave my thoughts on some of these hot takes. Have a hot take of your own? Why not leave it in the comments down below, and make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to show me that this is the type of content that is interesting to you. Also, shout out to the following channel members, Something Something YouTube and Potato King for being silver members or higher. If you want to receive a shout out like these channel members here, then become a silver member or higher today, as it's a way to support me in a way that helps keep the lights on, and channel members also receive an exclusive role in my Discord server, for which you can find a link to in the description down below. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day.